What would I hope for if my loved ones or if I was faced with this kind of catastrophe?
Rebuilding Paradise is an amazing documentary.
Thank you.
I'm really curious to know at what point you got involved with the project. Like how long after the disaster did you get involved?
I mean, we began talking about it almost immediately. My mother-in-law lived the last 4 or 5 years of her life in Paradise, so I knew that town. And I have nieces and nephews and in-laws who live in Redding. They just endured a fire. They were unscathed, which we were grateful for, but it had done a lot of damage. And then suddenly this Paradise fire happens, and it's a town I'd been in. I knew it, and it wasn't just a bad fire. It was a wipeout. It was total devastation. 95% of the town was burned. My assistant at Imagine, Louisa Vellis, and I were looking, at these images, and she literally said, I wonder if they can even rebuild. That might be a great idea for a film. And I thought, absolutely, I'd like to know if rebuilding Paradise is a possibility, and if so, how, what would it look like? Especially once the kind of the glare of the news crews vanished. And so it was very early on.
Well, I mean, the thing, from knowing your work, I mean, you seem like an inherently optimistic person, and that's one of the things I found interesting about you directing this. Is like, if you were that involved, you didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know that there was going to be anything resembling a happy ending for this.
Well, this is a verite documentary, my first, and I've been really enjoying delving into the documentary medium, and I've been learning a lot from it and getting a lot of satisfaction out of it. I think it's creatively good for my work directing, scripted narratives, but this is my first one where you go in with a question, and and no answers. You might hope it's going to go in a certain direction, but there's no way of controlling any of it. And so much of it has to do with in this case, the individuals who we were able to begin following, and the range of their experiences and the way their journey was going to inform sort of the greater look at a community, this community under incredible duress. But it's a test. That's a cruel test when you face that. And if there's anything that I would hope audiences would, it would really just to simply ask themselves the question, what would I hope for if my loved ones or if I was faced with this kind of catastrophe? And it doesn't have to be a fire. It could be it's a full array of them that we can all face. And what would I want from society? What would I want from me, myself, my loved ones? And I think if we ask ourselves that question, not in a fleeting way, but in a kind of a deep way, and if we're honest about the answers, I think it's going to shift a lot of people's thinking about how a society is supposed to manage these sort of things, these very dramatic circumstances, and what the options are. I'm not a policymaker, but I know we're getting more and more of these situations all around the world, but in the U.S. also. It's not enough to be in a place where you just kind of react to it, sure. Which is what we've done before, because it happened a couple times a year around the country, 3 times a year. Not this. This is onslaught of devastation.
As you're saying, this is the first time you've done a verite documentary. Would you do it again?
Oh yeah, I mean I definitely would. And yet, of course, it's a gamble. In this case, Nat Geo supported us very early on. I went. Doc producer came with me, a team. We started gathering footage, making contacts, talking to police officers, asking if we could use their body cam footage, and we put together some early interviews and some footage, took it to Nat Geo, and who we imagine we've done a lot of great, interesting projects with them, and Courtney Monroe and Carolyn Bernstein have been incredibly supportive and encouraging, and they really just bought it in the room, and been incredibly supportive. But it's a good project for Nat Geo. It's science and humanity blended in one story.
So, for the actual production of this, because this is a very long and involved production, obviously.
Yeah, a year, a little over, just slightly less than a year.
Yeah, it's like, so who are the people without whom, in terms of actually making it on the ground, that Rebuilding Paradise would not exist without?
On the filmmaking side, Zan Parker and Liz Morheim, producers who, would rotate in and out. Sometimes they'd be there together, sometimes I could be there. They would deputize local sort of field producers sometimes, or shooters, to cover an event, but they just kept up running contact. They managed the Facebook pages that led to all of the cell phone footage and that comprised the majority of the opening sequence, which is 8 or 10 minutes of just what it was to be in the fire and to try to escape the fire. And it's as cinematic and powerful sequences I've ever been involved in. So so they worked with Lincoln Else, was a primary cinematographer. Other photographers would come and go, and so we weren't exactly embedded, but we were cycling through every other week, 2 or 3 times a month. And when I couldn't be there in person, they'd FaceTime, so I could, from the set of Hillbilly Elegy, I'd be talking to one of the principals who I already had a bit of a relationship with, and suggesting ideas for questions, and also events. I think our cameras and our team gravitated toward the people who were really showing up, and it's kind of a basic fundamental thing on the one hand, but easy to overlook on the other, that these events matter. It's a demonstration of strength and hope to simply show up at their parade, their Gold Nuggets Day, which is a thing that, tradition for 50, 60 years, and they were not going to not have Gold Nugget Day. So it's a shadow of what it was, of course, but they did it. They did it. The Christmas tree lighting, memorial services, town council meetings, where you go and form an opinion and engage. And I really feel that engagement was both inspiring, but it's also a lesson to us. That I think that's where there's a lot of emotional health and strength that comes from that kind of engagement.